You tell yourself you had no choice, that your circumstances made you do it, that your past determined who you are, that your job, your family, your history, these things define you, limit you, explain you. You say, I had to. You say, I couldn't help it. You say, that's just who I am. And Jean-Paul Sartre would look at you with those strange wall-eyed stare of his and say, you're lying. Not to me, to yourself. You are living in what he called mauvaise foi, bad faith, the refusal to acknowledge your own freedom, the pretense that you are less free than you are, the performance of necessity when the truth is you are choosing, always choosing, every moment, every breath, every word, every silence. And you lie because freedom is unbearable. Because if you are free, truly free, then you are responsible for your choices, for your life, for your suffering, for your cowardice, for the person you've become and the person you've refused to become. And that responsibility is so crushing, so total, so inescapable, that most people would rather believe they are trapped than face the terror of being free. Sartre spent his life dismantling this lie, exposing it, hunting it down in every corner of human existence. And what he found was this: bad faith is everywhere. In the waiter who hides inside his role, in the woman who pretends she doesn't notice a man's hand on hers, in the soldier who says he was just following orders, in the lover who says, I can't help how I feel. In you, right now, telling yourself that your life couldn't have been otherwise. But here is what Sartre understood that most people refuse to see. Bad faith is not just a lie you tell others, it is the lie you tell yourself so convincingly that you forget it's a lie. It is the story you build around your life to make it feel inevitable, to make your choices feel like fate, to transform freedom into necessity, so you don't have to carry the weight of what you've done and what you've refused to do. And the most terrifying part? Sartre believed that even the philosopher who dedicated his life to exposing bad faith, could not fully escape it. That perhaps no one can. That bad faith is woven so deeply into the human condition that the moment you think you've escaped it, you've simply found a new way to hide. This is not philosophy as comfort. This is philosophy as exposure, as accusation, as the voice that will not let you rest. And if you've ever felt that voice, if you've ever lain awake at 3 in the morning knowing that the story you've been telling yourself about your life is a lie, then you already know what Sartre spent his life trying to say. You are freer than you want to be. And that freedom is your sentence. Sartre once sat in a cafe in Paris, watching a waiter. The waiter moved with exaggerated precision. His gestures were too smooth, too practiced, too perfect. He bowed a little too deeply. He smiled a little too brightly. His voice had the musical quality of someone performing a script they've memorized but never believed. And Sartre saw it immediately. This man was not working. He was hiding. He was hiding inside the role of waiter the way a child hides inside a costume. He was using the uniform, the gestures, the politeness, the choreography of service as a way to escape having to be a person. Because being a person is terrifying. It requires freedom. It requires choice. It requires standing before the world without a script and deciding moment by moment who you are. But being a waiter? That's easy. The role tells you what to do. The uniform tells you who to be. You don't have to choose. You just perform. And if someone asks you why you did something, you can say, because I'm a waiter. That's what waiters do. And the self disappears, the responsibility disappears, the freedom disappears, and you are safe. This, Sartre said, is bad faith. The waiter is lying to himself. He is pretending that he is a waiter, that his essence is waiter, that his identity is fixed, that he has no choice but to perform this role. But the truth is more unsettling. He is a human being who is playing waiter, and every moment he plays it, he is choosing to play it. He could stop. He could walk out. He could throw the tray on the floor and scream. He won't, but he could. And the fact that he won't is not proof that he can't. It is proof that he is choosing not to, and then lying to himself about the choice. You do this too. You hide inside your roles. Employee, parent, partner, friend. You perform them so completely that you forget you are performing. You say, I have to go to work. But you don't. You choose to. You say, I can't leave this relationship. But you can. You choose not to. You say, this is just who I am. But it isn't. It's who you've chosen to be, over and over, until the choice became invisible. And Sartre is standing behind you, whispering, stop lying. You are not your job. You are not your relationship. You are not your past. You are not even your personality. You are the freedom that chooses, moment by moment, to inhabit these things. And the moment you pretend otherwise, the moment you say, I had no choice, you are living in bad faith. But here is where Sartre's philosophy becomes devastating, because he didn't just apply this logic to other people, he applied it to himself. And what he found was that even the man who spent his life preaching freedom could not escape the trap of bad faith. That even Sartre, in his most honest moments, was performing, was hiding, was lying to himself about his own freedom. Jean-Paul Sartre was born in 1905 in Paris, into a bourgeois family that expected him to become respectable, conventional, safe. His father died when he was young, his mother remarried, and Sartre, small, cross-eyed, ugly by his own admission, grew up feeling like an outsider, like someone watching life from the margins. And from those margins, he began to see things other people missed. He studied philosophy. He read Heidegger, Husserl, Kierkegaard. He lived through World War II as a prisoner of war, then as part of the French resistance. He watched people collapse under occupation, watched them collaborate, watched them hide, watched them pretend they had no choice. And he understood that the greatest enemy of freedom is not force, it is self-deception. It is the lie you tell yourself to make your cowardice bearable. After the war, Sartre became famous. His play, No Exit, gave the world the line, "Hell is other people." His novel, Nausea, articulated the vertigo of existence without essence. His philosophy became the voice of a generation trying to rebuild meaning from the ruins of fascism. And at the center of everything he wrote was one idea: existence precedes essence. You are not born with a nature. You are not born with a purpose. You are not born with a destiny. You are born, and then you exist. And through your choices, through your actions, through your freedom, you create what you are. There is no blueprint, no script, no God handing you a manual. There is only you, standing in the world with the terrifying responsibility of making yourself. And most people cannot bear this, so they invent essences. They say, I'm naturally anxious. I'm not a creative person. I come from a broken family. I've always been this way. And these statements feel true because you've repeated them so many times, they've solidified into facts. But they are not facts. They are choices you've made about how to interpret your life. And every time you repeat them, You are choosing to keep interpreting your life that way, and then lying to yourself about the choice. Sartre called this facticity versus transcendence. Facticity is the raw material of your life, your body, your history, your circumstances. These are real. You cannot wish them away. But transcendence is your freedom to interpret them, to respond to them, to shape your life in relation to them. You are always more than your facticity. You are always transcending it through your choices. And bad faith is the refusal to acknowledge this. It is collapsing transcendence into facticity. It is saying, this is just how things are. I am just how I am.
But Sartre knew something darker. He knew that bad faith is not just intellectual. It is emotional. It is existential. It is the way you protect yourself from the crushing weight of freedom. Because if you are truly free, if there is no essence, no nature, no fate, then everything you are is your fault. Every failure, every weakness, every moment of cowardice, every lie, every betrayal, and that guilt is unbearable. So you tell yourself you couldn't help it. You had no choice. You were shaped by forces beyond your control. And Sartre would say, no, you chose, and you are lying about the choice. But the most haunting part of Sartre's life is this. Even he could not escape bad faith. Even the philosopher of freedom was trapped in his own performance. And nowhere is this more visible than in his relationship with Simone de Beauvoir. Sartre met Beauvoir when they were students. She was brilliant, beautiful, younger than him, and she believed in his philosophy with a fervor that bordered on devotion. And Sartre proposed something radical. They would have a relationship outside the conventions of bourgeois morality. No marriage, no monogamy, no possessiveness. They would be free, truly free. They would love each other without owning each other. They would have other lovers, contingent loves, Sartre called them, while remaining each other's essential love. And Beauvoir agreed. She believed in the philosophy. She believed in freedom. She believed that love should not be a prison. But her letters tell a different story. Years of jealousy she could not express. Nights she spent alone while Sartre pursued younger women, convincing herself this was liberation. Compromises she made that felt less like choices and more like sacrifices. She wrote to him, "I am not always happy." And he wrote back breezily, "Happiness is not the point. Freedom is the point." And she stayed. For 50 years, she stayed. She lived the philosophy. She performed the role of the liberated woman, the woman who did not need marriage, the woman who did not need exclusivity, the woman who was free. But was she free? Or was she living in bad faith, pretending she had chosen something that was, in reality, imposed on her by the man she loved? Was she transcending her circumstances? Or was she collapsing her freedom into the facticity of loving someone who would never fully love her back? Sartre never answered this. Perhaps he couldn't. Perhaps he didn't want to. Because to answer it would be to admit that his philosophy, his beautiful, radical philosophy of freedom, had been used as a justification for cruelty. That he had hidden behind freedom the way the waiter hides behind his roll. That even he, the great exposer of bad faith, was living a lie. And this is the paradox Sartre could never escape. The moment you claim to be living authentically, you risk turning authenticity into a new performance, a new role, a new way to hide.
In 1964, Sartre was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. The world expected him to accept it, to take his place among the great writers, to receive the recognition he had earned. And Sartre refused. He wrote a letter explaining his decision. He said that accepting the prize would turn him into an institution, that it would compromise his freedom, that a writer must remain independent, must refuse to be absorbed into the machinery of power and prestige. And the world was shocked. Some called him a hero, others called him arrogant, but everyone agreed this was pure Sartre. This was a man who walked his philosophy. But was he free?
Or had he simply found a new role to perform, the man who refuses, the rebel, the outsider, the philosopher who will not be bought? Even in his refusal, he was choosing an identity. Even in his rejection of the institution, he was building an institution around himself. Sartre, the man who refused the Nobel Prize, a legend, a performance, a new form of bad faith. Because here is the trap Sartre discovered. There is no escape from choice, no escape from freedom, no escape from the responsibility of creating yourself, moment by moment, for your entire life. Even when you choose authenticity, you are choosing. Even when you refuse a role, you are performing a refusal. Even when you try to live without bad faith, you risk falling into a new, subtler form of self-deception. You cannot stop choosing. You can only lie to yourself about whether you're choosing. And this is what makes Sartre's philosophy so haunting, because it offers no rest, no redemption, no moment when you can finally say, I have done it. I am free. I am authentic. I am no longer lying. There is only the endless vigilance of watching yourself, questioning yourself, catching yourself in the act of pretending and beginning again. Sartre died in 1980. 50,000 people attended his funeral. They lined the streets of Paris. They mourned the philosopher who had given voice to a generation's struggle with freedom, responsibility, meaning. And Beauvoir was there, walking behind the coffin. Alone. She had lived with him for 50 years. She had believed in his philosophy. She had sacrificed for it. And now he was gone. And she was left to ask the questions Sartre never answered. Was I free? Or was I fooling myself? You know this feeling. You have felt it in your own life. The moment when you realize that the story you've been telling yourself about your choices is a lie, that the role you've been performing has become a prison, that the freedom you thought you had was always limited by fears you refused to acknowledge, that you have been living in bad faith without knowing it. And Sartre cannot save you from this. He can only point at it. He can only say, look, see, stop pretending. You are free, and that freedom is your burden, and you will carry it until you die. And every moment you pretend otherwise is a moment you are lying to yourself. So ask yourself, what role are you hiding inside? What story are you telling yourself about why you had no choice? What freedom are you refusing to acknowledge? What lie are you living? You cannot escape bad faith completely. Sartre knew this. Even he, in his refusal of the Nobel Prize, in his performance of freedom, was trapped in the paradox. But you can stop pretending you are not choosing. You can acknowledge the freedom you have. You can carry the weight of your responsibility without collapsing it into fate. This is what Sartre offers. Not comfort, not escape, not redemption, but the terrifying, exhilarating recognition that you are freer than you want to be, that your life is not determined, that you are making it, moment by moment, choice by choice, and that every time you say, I had no choice, you are lying.
And the lie is what keeps you trapped. So stop lying. See the choice. Own the freedom. Carry the weight. This is what it means to be human. This is what Sartre spent his life trying to say, and you are hearing it now. If this reached you, if you've been living in a lie you didn't know you were telling, leave a word below. Tell me what role you've been hiding inside, what story you've been telling yourself about why you had no choice. I read every comment. You're not alone in the trap.